doesn't mean that real estate is inherently becoming more valuable. It's that inflation is making it more valuable. It's a great way to park your money because you get a better return.
You had you said that having a lot of money gave you the confidence initially, and so I'm pretty sure that plays a lot of it into what I'm about to ask. But for someone like me, I've always been interested in maybe potentially investing in real estate, but one, I don't really know where to start exactly. Like all I know is like I've bought a house, I've sold a house, and I've bought another house. That's all I know how to do, and that's because I call my friend, my real estate agent, like, let's do this, and they're like, cool, we got it, we'll take it from here. But for someone like me in my position, I do have a mortgage. I can't pay it all off right now. Like it's definitely a high price bill for what I make. So I don't have a lot of extra income. Mm-hmm. How can someone like me who has a mortgage, has a family, has bills, how can I get into real estate?
The first thing I would say to your average homeowner who wants to buy more real estate is you can't look at it like it's a stock. This is a big mistake everybody makes, is that, a deeper theory that I would have is that most of us approach life based on whatever we did before. So if you ever become an entrepreneur, you have a 1099 job, you're going to think like a W-2 employee, which is the worst thing ever, because the W-2 employees are sort of subconsciously trained to figure out, how do I come to work, do the least amount of work possible to not
Andrew,
get fired, right?
He's describing you pretty well. He's got your number, bro.
Yeah. Nobody in the W-2 world has to go generate income, has to find business. They don't have to put themselves out there like you do when you're an entrepreneur. And then when they become an entrepreneur, they've got this house cat mentality. Like, someone brings me my tuna, I just got to open the can and eat the tuna. I'm not hunting, right? You start to open a business now, there's a fear, like, I'm not going to eat today, that turns you into that jungle cat that wants to go hunt. The same is true. Most people, when they think about investing, they think about the stock market, which more or less is based on buy low and sell high. That is the only way you make money in stocks. The longer you hold it, the better your chances of selling high are, but that's still what you're doing. Real estate has an aspect of that where you can time the market, where you can buy low and sell high, but that's not the fundamentals of how we're doing it. What you actually want to look for is a property that will generate more income than it costs to own it. That idea of cash flow. So the house you live in, if you're the average person, is probably like a tract home in a nice community that your wife really likes, has good schools, and you maximize how much you spend every month in order to make that dream happen for them. The properties that I would look for would be an older home with a basement and an ADU, where I can live in the basement, I can rent out the main house and the ADU, or I can turn the main house into two separate units because the floor plan's right. I can rent out the ADU in each unit, and then I'm living in the basement.
ADU, what's that?
It's accessory dwelling unit. It'd be like like an in-law unit, or like, when they have like a little separate studio in the backyard type of thing. Different areas that can be rented, or maybe a triplex, or you live in one unit, you rent out the other two. So now, even though your mortgage may be $4,000, you're bringing in $3,600 in rent. So you're living for $400 a month. And you're getting tax benefits, right? So you're giving up some of the comfort in order to have this asset that functions very efficiently, and then every year the rents are going to go up. So you're bringing in $3,600 the first year, then you're bringing in $3,800. The next thing you know, you're at $4,000. You're living for free, and then you buy another house like that next year, right? That would be the approach that you would want to take if you're like, I want to get into real estate investing, but I don't want to take a big risk. You got to stop thinking about just, how do I buy it for less than what I think it's worth, or how do I buy it and then sell it later. If you have that cash flow component, you've now put power in your hands. It's like when you're playing poker and you're not one of the blinds and you choose if you want to play that hand or not. That's how real estate investing works for me. If I'm going to sell, it's because the market looks really good and I have better opportunities, but I don't have to, because it's bringing in enough money that it can pay for itself, or I can make additional income. That would be like, if you could just get that part down and then slowly look for the type of properties that work that way, all the rest of it will fall into place.
And then, is it difficult to get into one of these houses? The reason why I ask, because the person that bought our previous house, something got caught up in escrow because somebody got confused, where they were under the impression that he was going to rent that house out, but he actually was going to live there and rent out his old house. So like, it almost like ruined the entire deal with like my current house and everything. So is it more difficult to purchase a home with the intention to rent, because you have to let them know up front, right, that you're not going to be living there?
What you're describing, I can tell you what happened, was the person buying the house the lender wasn't informed of what the purpose was, and that came up during escrow. Yeah. So one of the things that people will do is, if you're buying a house to rent out, they want a much bigger down payment. That's considered an investment property, which immediately to a lender is more risky. So they want you to put down 20, 25%. Well, if you're buying a house to live in, you can get by with 3.5% down, 5% down for really good loans. They're not like a scary, adjustable rate mortgage. So the person probably said, I'm buying this to live in, and then later on said, well, I'm going to rent it out. Or the lender thought that they were just going to rent it out. And that's what stopped everything. So no, it's not hard if you're just honest up front with what your intentions would be.
It just costs more up front, basically.
They're going to have to put a lot more down if they wanted to rent it out.
Got it.
So quick question about that. So if you were to say, I'm going to buy it to live in, you live in it for a year, and then you begin renting it out, is that problematic?
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Totally,
Okay.
totally
Do you have to refinance it to let them know?
Nope.
Shit.
I know. This is like, logically, you would think that's the way it should work, but that's just not how lending regulations go. I call what you just described the sneaky rental tactic. I'm a huge proponent. So you buy it.
That's fucking. I thought he was going to say you can't do that with it. Okay, cool.
You buy it with 3% down, 3.5% down, right? And then you live in it for a year, 9 months, whatever it would be. You decide you want to move on with your life. You're just allowed to do whatever you want with it. When you bought it, your intention was a primary residence, and that's the only question that they ask.
Is that the time frame? 9 months?
Well, I don't know that there is a time frame, right? I want to be careful with how I say it correctly. My understanding is that in most loans, did you have the intention of occupying it as a primary residence? They can't legally force you to. Your job changes across the country. Some sick family member happens. You just then have to rent it out. I'm not going to say that happens all the time, but that happens all the time.
That's
and there are some weird things too, right? With California state law of like, I think it's like anything over 14 days. If you stay at like a vacation home, anything more than like 14 days, then it's got to be considered something different. Or
so when it comes
to what I'm talking about them all.
No, that's good though. I'm glad we're bringing it up. What you're talking about is like short-term rental legislation. So let's say you buy a house and you want to go then put it on Airbnb. In most cases, I mean, if it's somewhere no one wants to rent, this isn't going to work. But say it's a place where there's a demand for it. You're going to make more renting it out as a short-term rental than you would be just putting a tenant in there and collecting money every single month. But there's going to be more work to it. What happens is this is working so well for so many people that, like, let's take Scottsdale, Arizona. This is blowing up over there. That house would normally sell for $700,000, but some investor is happy to pay $850 for it because it's going to generate so much stinking money.
It might generate $2 million for the year or something.
It doesn't matter what the comparable show, to them it's worth more. So they pay $850. So now everybody else who wanted to buy that property can't afford it anymore. So in certain areas, you get like Hawaii, this is happening over there. You have the local Hawaiians that are kind of pissed because these people are coming in and just throwing money at properties.
Don't they not allow Airbnb there?
That's why. So they go to their local government and say, we don't want this Airbnb because it's jacking up home prices. And so then they say, well, you can't rent it out for less than 30 days at a time or less than 14 days. Otherwise, it's a short-term rental.
Right. And so with you, I mean, you're busy. I'm pretty sure you are pretty handy, but I don't think when tenants are calling saying that their toilet's backing up, that you're over there with the plunger. So when I did rent, we did have property managers because the owner of the house, I think, was out of the state as well. Is that something that you would recommend for everybody just starting out, or is that more when you've kind of established enough homes that it can kind of pay for itself type of thing?
The best way that we describe that is look at, if you were to go change the locks on that property, how much money did you save and how many hours did you spend, and come up with an hourly rate. And if that hourly rate is less than what you can make doing something else, hire it out.
We've all heard that to get optimal sleep, you should cool your room down to 68 to 69 degrees. But that's not all you need to do, and that's why we've partnered with 8 Sleep mattresses. Now, they have the Pod Pro and the Pod Pro Cover, and the amazing technology of this mattress allows you to cool the mattress down to 55 degrees or to have it as warm as 110 degrees. But the great thing is that the temperature changes through the night based off your actual body temperature to make sure that you get the most restful sleep possible. You fall asleep 32% faster, and you move around 40% less when you're actually asleep. It's amazing. And Andrew, how can people get it?
Yeah, this is amazing technology that actually changes its temperature based off of your sleep cycle. There's no other technology like it anywhere else. To take advantage of this, head over to 8sleep.com/power project. That's EIGHT sleep.com/power project. And you guys will receive $150 off this amazing technology. Links to them down in the description below. Let's get back to this video.
The caveat I'll throw into that is that's only looking at it from a financial perspective. I think there's also like an energy component that I work into when I do something or when I don't. So if there's a task that I just hate doing, it just drains me of energy, the rest of my day is going to suck because I had to do that thing, I'll hire it out even if it's more expensive. And there's certain things that aren't really worth my time, but I just get a kick out of doing it. I really like it. I factor that in there too, because if you go do something that gets you juiced up, and like, you know, sometimes I'll step in on our listings and I'll negotiate an extra 25 grand for the client or something, right? I'm going to make a couple $100. It doesn't really mean that much to me. But if I know I just saved that person 25 grand, the next time a person comes my way and they say, I don't want to pay 6% commission, I want to pay 4%. I can fight that battle because I know I just saved my last guy 25 grand and you're fighting with me over $3,000 or something. So that's the other thing I would work into it. But in general, I don't want to be really, really good at changing light bulbs and changing locks. So I let the person who's already good at that, let him feed his family off the stuff that he does. And then I focus on the parts of the business that I think are better for me to be good at.
I think maybe years ago it was very common, you know, like for my dad, who's like in his 70s. You go to school, you know, you go through like normal school system, and then you go to college. Some point you get married, you start raising a family, and as soon as possible you buy a house. My dad has been a real estate agent for, I don't know, 40 years or something like that. Does buying a house still have the same value as it used to? We're seeing a shift with the kind of value that we place upon college to some degree. Obviously, we can all agree that having more knowledge is always a good thing, and having some education is great. But traditional school, we're seeing some of that kind of shift and change, and just our times are changing quite a bit. Do homes still have a tremendous value? It kind of almost sounds like to me, in just listening to some of what you're saying, is they almost don't seem nearly as valuable as they used to be, except if you're making money on them.
Well, when we talk about value, if it's not about money, what would the rest of the value be?
Well, I just think that's a great question. That is my question. Because everyone thinks that they have to get a house, and not everyone, many people think that they have to get a house, and they'll do anything other than rent. Because renting, you know, they're spending $1,900 a month, and that could go towards me owning something. But it also takes people like 30, 40, 50 years to even own something. And then they own it, but then they don't really ever get an opportunity to really do much with it, except for in some cases where maybe you had kind of a large family and you got to shrink down, and you sell a home and you move into something smaller or something like that. So you kind of understand where I'm kind of coming from.
Is it still the American dream to own your home?
If you are a person who has the capability of earning a lot of money doing something else, it's less important to you. That's the first thing I'll say. So maybe someone in your position having to deal with like the maintenance issues of owning a home, or like the headache of getting pre-approved for a loan. If you're in this spot and you're making good money and you're bringing good value, you're a doctor who's making great money and you got to think about doctor stuff, renting might be okay for that person. Our typical audience is your blue collar American who has a W-2 job and is kind of stuck in a form of a rat race they don't know how to get out of. I think owning a home for that person is massively more important and valuable than it was before.
Owning a home, even if they don't do some of the things you suggested earlier, in like living in the basement and those kinds of things.
Yes, and here's why. This is what I'll say. If you guys look at what a rent was for a house out, you guys from West Sacramento, is this where you've been?
Pretty much,
this area?
Yeah.
What do you think rents were 10 years ago for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom?
I have no idea.
How many years ago?
10.
1,600?
No. Mortgage was about 13, so I would say 14.
You think renting was more than a mortgage 10 years ago?
Yeah.
So typically the argument would be that renting is less than the mortgage, so that's why people would do it. So let's say your rent in that case is like $1,100.
Okay.
What's the rent like now?
It's through the roof.
Yeah. $2,500 or so, somewhere in that range. Okay, so the thing is, when you're renting, you don't have control over what your housing expenses are. Your landlord controls that. Now, I have a football analogy that people say I'm using it too much, so I'm loath to use it. But you guys football fans,
football.
I'm assuming.
He doesn't know nothing about football over here.
That's the one you play with your feet.
Yeah, with your feet.
It's football. It's football. But yeah.
American football.
Yes, American football. Let's take like your dad's generation, right? When he was growing up, the way you won at football was you played great defense, you had a great running game, you pounded the other team, and in the fourth quarter, they were tired and you ran right through them, right? And you grinded it out and you won 13-9 or something like that. Have you seen the rule changes we've had in the NFL?
Yeah.
Right. And so how those rule changes affected how the game is played.
Absolutely.
Now? Right? It's all about, they want more offense. You can't touch a quarterback. You can't touch a wide receiver. The defense has been hamstrung. If your GM is still drafting really solid defensive players, you're just at a disadvantage because the rules are favoring the offense. So you want to be investing in the area where you're going to get a better return, which is a great quarterback, great wide receivers. Your running back is less important. It doesn't mean they're not important. They're not as important. The way that the country has handled every single problem that we've hit financially has been print more money and stimulus our way out of it. Okay. It's maybe not the best example, but it's like, hey, your body needs to sleep. You need to let it recover. You need to let it rebuild all the things you did to it. You tore it up. Nope, just take some meth. I feel great. I'm on meth, right? I can just keep going throughout the night.
Or like what a lot of people do is they'll take like pre-workout, to do a workout. And we've kind of advised people all the time, man, you're spending money on pre-workout and supplements and you're trying to find all these things. Like, just work on your sleep a little bit more.
An economy is just like a body. It needs to have periods of time where it's charging ahead and big progress is made, but some bad decisions are made during that time. Businesses are started that aren't very good. Industries change, right? Like technology increases. So some of those business needs to naturally die, just like nature, just like our body. We've gotten away from letting that happen because a politician doesn't want to be the one holding the bag when you hit that period of time where we need to sleep. They're not going to be voted in. So, and both sides of the aisle, they both learned to do this, have said, let's just print more money. Let's just create more stimulus. Let's just add to the how much money we have in circulation, and it's creating stupid inflation. So this is what I'm getting at. The rules of the game have changed. The NFL scores are inflated from where they used to be because they changed the rules. Money rules in our country have changed as well. Being a millionaire doesn't mean what it meant to be a millionaire 20 years ago. It's very different, right? If you look at how much money is in circulation, it is staggering compared to how much it's been for almost the whole time the country's been in existence, right? So if you're not buying a home, you're losing control of your housing expenses because rents are going to go up every single year aggressively. You're also not being able to charge somebody else what that rent would be as things are going up. And home values are just continuing to increase. It doesn't mean that necessarily real estate is inherently becoming more valuable. It's that inflation is making it more valuable. It's a great way to park your money because you get a better return. That's the best way I'd be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I love what you said. That second part of that kind of clicked and made the most sense to me, and the fact that it's not going to go down. I mean, I guess there's highs and there's some lulls here and there, but in general, it's going to continue to trend upward. And if you have the ability to be able to rent something to somebody else, like how cool is that? If you started now, that 10 years from now, that money will automatically increase without necessarily, I guess, any extra work on your part.
And like you mentioned, you said $1,300 was your mortgage 10 years ago. What do you think that same house's mortgage payment would be today?
Oh, it's going to be over $2,000.
Significantly over that, right?
Yeah, it was a very, very small place.
So what we find is that when you buy real estate, it's usually more expensive than renting. It's very rare that it's actually cheaper unless you do that technique called house hacking that I described earlier, where you rent out parts of the house. But over a 10-year period, there's no way it's going to be cheaper to be renting other than owning. So it is a delayed gratification play, 100%. And so because I know that's how the rules of the game work, I just set my life up around that. When I'm making decisions on what I'm going to invest money in, I know, hey, I could rent the house for $2,500. I could buy it. It's going to be maybe $3,500. Well, if I'm looking at over a 10-year period, that's a no-brainer solid play. So I just got to live beneath my means for 5 years until my rent catches up to, or the mortgage is what now rents are today. And then I can get that nice car that I really want. And then your house is sort of paying for your car.
Hey, wait, before you go, you got this far. That means that you've enjoyed the heat that we're continuing to bring you. So listen, like the video, comment something down below. We'll reply back, and subscribe to the channel because we continue to bring you the heat. Seriously, do it. Love you. Bye.